Ann Glauber. She is Senior Vice President of Reuter Fenn. As chair of the New York-based Business Council for Peace, Ann Glauber brings together businesswomen with enterprising women in countries ravaged by armed conflict. The council has 90 enthusiastic members devoted to providing help and guidance in areas of technology, finance, and communications, concentrating on countries in conflict. Maria Inahosa of CNN News, in introducing Glauber, highlighted her work in Rwanda, where the council stepped in to help women reconstruct their communities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you. And thank you, Women's E-News, for this wonderful recognition of the Business Council for Peace. And I have to say that I am sharing this award with our extraordinary Business Council members who volunteer enormous amount of their time, energy, expertise to put women into business in region of post-conflict. And our members are here, and guys, I'm sharing this award with you. The Business Council for Peace has put unprecedented revenues into the hands of women in regions of post-conflict. We've put in over $100,000 to Rwanda women alone. And we've done this by shifting the paradigm. We're not about charity, we're about profitability to strengthen women's lives. We don't do business with the powerful. We strike agreements with the widows, with women living with HIV/AIDS, with women struggling for their human rights, and with women whose children are dying every day. And we don't just market products, we tell women's stories, and we give voice to the voiceless, and we highlight their remarkable courage, working with the media like Women's E-News. And in the process, we are empowering women with a hope and the dignity so that they can make peace in their own lives and for their community. Thank you.
Film producer Lydia Dean Pilcher says working on a movie is like birthing a child. Pilcher is the founder of Cine Mosaic, a New York-based production company. Introducing her at the awards dinner, TV journalist Tori Silver says Pilcher sees film as a way to raise social consciousness on controversial issues and is dedicated to producing feature films that focus on diversity. She's made more than 30 films, including the HBO feature Iron-Jawed Angels, starring Academy Award winners Hilary Swank and Angelica Houston. It dramatizes the struggles of the suffragettes who fought for women's voting rights.
As she is currently shooting The Namesake in India with Mira Nair, Lydia comes to us tonight via film.
Hello, we're taping this in Eastchester, New York, where I'm making a movie with my longtime collaborator, Mira Nair, and we're moving the shoot to Calcutta, India next week, which is where we'll be by the time you see this tape. But I'm excited that you're honoring a movie maker tonight, and I've always believed in the power of film, the power for movies to teach us about the world, to inspire us, to put us in touch with our humanity. And I had the privilege about a year ago to produce a movie called Iron-Jawed Angels, starring the irrepressible Hilary Swank, playing Alice Paul, who led the radical faction of the suffragist movement, who picketed the White House. They were arrested, they were dragged and beaten in prison, went on a national hunger strike, and ultimately convinced the nation and the government that this was a real deal issue that wasn't going to go away, and this is how women got the right to vote in our country. It's not a very well-known story, and we realized that it just had not been put into the history books, possibly too radical, possibly too subversive. And it was a privilege to be able to get it out into the world and show it to young women and show it to women who were fighting for their right to vote in Saudi Arabia and Iraq. And I think that in Women's E-News, honoring myself and honoring the women filmmakers who I collaborate with really shows that we are looking for our future to be formed by those who speak, discover, create, invent, and those who can articulate ideas that change how we view and think about the world. Alice Paul had a vision, and I want to thank you for this honor. It inspires me to remember that we as storytellers can make a difference. Thank you.
Cindy Hounsell first sought adventure in the sky. She became a flight attendant, but when her airline collapsed, she and other female flight attendants found themselves without funds or benefits. She determined to work on women's financial issues through public interest law, and after law school, focused on helping women prepare knowledgeably for retirement. Hounsell has set up workshops and consumer guides and is now focusing on helping low-income women fund their retirement. As journalist Robin Hendry pointed out in her introduction, women like that in a poor Boston neighborhood helped raise Hounsell, and she has not forgotten them.
I give you Cindy Hounsell. Feel free.
You'll hold it. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate being here in the company of all these incredible women, and I feel sort of humbled, like what could I possibly say after hearing all these stories? But I would like to call attention to a woman here at the table who happens to be really one of the nominators and one of the reasons I'm here tonight. So I'm going to make her stand up. And I want you all to look at her beautiful outfit, which was knitted by poor women in Appalachia. And it's the most incredible project, and she started this about 10 years ago. So. Oh, sorry, Diane Browning, yes. I started working on this issue about 20 years ago, and I was on a project that was funded by the Administration on Aging. For 7 years, all I did was talk to older women who were poor and who had done everything that, we ask in a society. Everything family values is all about, that's what those women did. And they ended up in poverty. And they ended up in poverty because they were living alone. I know I'm not supposed to mention the P word, poverty. I'm going to mention a couple of the others. Aging, nobody wants to talk about it. Those women are invisible. Retirement, people say to me, don't ever use that word. Nobody wants to hear it. Well, we have to hear it because we're going to have 3 times as many elderly women in the next 25 years. And in the time that I've been working on this issue, nothing has changed. I mean, now at least we're having some policymakers, because it's an election year, pay attention. But this is the world of, ownership. And I call it, you're going to own your own poverty is really what it's going to mean. So I thank you all for inviting me. I thank Rita, who's been a big fan of ours. And for those of you who want to know why we're called Wiser, if we did the men's thing, it would be Miser, and it never would have worked. So. My other quote is from Betty Davis, who said, old age is no place for sissies, and she was right.
Thank you.
Gail Reimer's parents were Holocaust survivors, and she grew up hearing stories about how her mother helped other women live through the horrors of their concentration camp prison. Reimer became a professor of Victorian studies at Wellesley, but now her single-minded goal is to preserve the great contributions of Jewish women to history. To that end, Reimer founded the Jewish Women's Archive in Brookline, Massachusetts, hoping to set the record straight.
Please welcome the visionary who is, in fact, preserving our history, Gail Reimer.
You'll hold it. One of the great joys and rewards of my work with the Jewish Women's Archive is that in addition to making visible the invisible women in the past, we're seeking out and gathering the stories of women today, women of great courage and great heart who live amongst us in community after community throughout this country. Each time I meet and talk with or listen to such women, I feel humbled, I feel inspired, I feel blessed, as I do tonight, in the midst of the many amazing women being honored and so many more all across this room. Thank you, Rita and Women's E-News, for tonight. Our vision at the Jewish Women's Archive is for a world in which the thoughts and deeds of women and men are valued equally, for a world in which every person, regardless of gender, feels recognized and valued, for a world in which women and girls listen to their own voices and their own truths and are listened to, for a world in which women feel confident about their capacity to shape the future, a confidence that derives from knowledge of the myriad ways in which women have shaped the past. The Jewish Women's Archive is part of a global movement to revolutionize history, what deeds matter, and whose thoughts and voices count. We are leading the way in harnessing new technology to gather and make available a massive compendium of records and stories documenting women's lives and experiences. The poet Muriel Rukeyser once asked, "What would happen if one woman told the truth about her life?" Her answer, "The world would split open." Now just think what will happen when we have access to not one, but hundreds of thousands of women's truths. In closing, I want to acknowledge and thank all those board staff and friends of the Jewish Women's Archive without whom the dream could not have become a reality. In particular, my closest partners, Barbara Dopkin, the founding chair of the Jewish Women's Archive, and Nikki Newman-Tanner, the current chair, my husband Joe, and my two daughters, Tamara and Ziva, who are central to my determination to turn this dream into a vibrant and vital enterprise. Thank you.
Shelby Knox became a national spokesperson for accurate and comprehensive sex education in public schools after realizing the abstinence-only program in her Lubbock, Texas high school was not protecting young women. At the awards dinner, journalist Pearl Stewart said Knox believes women have to fight for comprehensive sex education because it promotes positive sexuality as well as teaching women how to protect themselves. Knox's battle to change Lubbock schools is chronicled in a recent PBS documentary.
Shelby, we are all delighted that you joined us tonight.
Thank you. First of all, as the youngest one of the women here tonight, I would like to say that I'm incredibly honored to be honored next to these women who have done these incredible things. I would like to give my thanks to the women in this room, the women who are not in this room, the women who have fought their battles silently, who have paved a path for me to be standing here today. My second thanks goes to my parents, who, although they are conservative Southern Baptist in Lubbock, Texas, they raised a raging feminist liberal. And I would like to thank them for that. My third, very sincere thanks, and I promise you I would not be standing here today, not only because they were the brave and talented artists who plucked me out of obscurity in Lubbock, Texas and made a film on me, but because they are the exemplification of women's media. They make their own films, they direct, produce, edit their own documentaries in a very tough world. Rose Rosenblatt and Marian Lipschitz, I would not be anywhere without you two. And finally, I would like to thank Women's E-News for, first of all, realizing that sex education is an issue that's vital to women. We have spent over $1 billion since 1996 in this country, federal dollars, toward abstinence-only sex education that is teaching young women that they don't have the right to control their own bodies, that they are not smart enough to make their own decisions, and that they don't have the right to be given information to make those decisions. So I thank Women's E-News for touching on that issue, and I also would like to thank Women's E-News for recognizing a young woman and recognizing that women my age are going to be the ones who occupy the boardrooms, who are in those offices at the media organizations, and one day, I promise with your help, and it could be me, I'm working on it, one day a woman will be in the White House, she will be in the Oval Office, and she will be fighting for all of these things.
Susan Weidman Schneider is the editor-in-chief and founder of Lilith. The well-known Jewish feminist magazine is now celebrating its 30th anniversary and prides itself on a readership that transcends generations. At the gala, presenter Maria Hinojosa said Schneider values her work with young women who, after their association with Lilith, go out into the wider world and try to make it a better place.
It's great. Congratulations, Susan.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to Women Z News for this fabulous honor, and Mazel Tov to all of the 21 leaders for the 21st century and the other 5 years of leaders as well. I want to say just one or two things in addition to that fabulous introduction by my new best friend here, Maria, my new sister. She does have great shoes. Is that we've learned over the 30 years that Lilith, something I think that is clear from everything that Women's E-News does as well, which is that women's voices and women's faces are very diverse, but the issues that we address affect, in the end, all of us. And that at Lilith, the tagline of the magazine is independent, Jewish, and frankly feminist. That there's a huge amount of diversity in the Jewish world also, which doesn't often get its due. So I thank you for reminding us all of that, Maria. I want to also say a word and a half about power. We see in this room an enormous amount of power. Power to make change, power to make the world a better place, and power to underwrite change. I want to thank Barbara Dobkin, philanthropist extraordinaire, who nominated me for this award. And there are many others in this room who will step up to the plate, I'm sure, and help to underwrite the kinds of changes that we 21, the previous 21, the leaders to come, will want to make in the world as we want to shape it. So thank you again, and here's to power for women and for men. What Eve Ensler has called vagina-friendly men.
Thank you.
Daisy Khan, the director of the American Society for Muslim Advancement, created the Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equity, known as WISE. Launched in 2006 by the American Society for Muslim Advancement, it is a global Muslim women's network and movement to show that Muslim women are active in their communities and that Islam positively inspires their activism. Daisy is introduced by the host of NPR's Latino USA, Maria Hinojosa.
Daisy, you are being awarded. It's your turn now.
Thank you very much. If you can hold that. I wanted to thank Rita for not only giving me this honor, but also really propelling me on my journey. Rita called me, I think 3-4 years ago and said, I'd like you to write an article on Islamic feminism. And I was a little stumped because I didn't know what it was. All I knew was that it was an embodiment of me and myself. So I did some research and realized that the Prophet Muhammad was a feminist himself. And he gave rights to women. He was surrounded by feminist women. His wife, who was 25 years his senior, gave him his first job and then proposed to him. And of course,